Hello, guys. Welcome. This is the Football Truth Podcast, episode 11. Happy to be here with my good friend Dan Dixon. Welcome, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's super fun to be here. This is like doing this podcast on the beach. It doesn't get much better than this, honestly.
Yeah, way better than any other, let's say, indoor podcast studios. Actually, getting grounded at the same time as working,
Yeah.
and embracing life as it should be. But to start, just as like a quick question. Do you train outside or in the gym?
That's a great question. I try to train outside as much as possible.
Yeah.
I'm definitely outside, at least walking, and definitely gonna if I want to get a workout in, I might go in the gym briefly, but it's
It's like a snack almost.
especially relative to when I was younger, and kind of the more I learn and the more my awareness grows, I just look back and I'm like, all the best athletes in the world come from places of high energy density, and that's no coincidence,
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, the more my awareness has grown over time, the more time I try to spend outside, and just be around life as much as possible. It's just so stimulating.
Yeah, absorbing real energy as opposed to let's say artificial energy.
Exactly.
So tell me about your background in sports and athletics. Guys, just as a background, Dan played American football, not soccer.
Yeah, I wish I was cool enough to play soccer. It's like a real world sport. But I grew up in Oklahoma, so very kind of American football-centric culture. Both my dad and stepfather played, so of course I looked up to them and wanted to be like them.
Mm-hmm.
And played football, high school football in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I was on some really good small school teams. We won a state championship my junior year. Just still the funnest moment I've ever had in sports. And then got recruited to Ivy League schools and kind of service academies. So I was like, pretty good high school football player, good student. Ended up going to Cornell University my freshman year. Got injured there, which is kind of where my story sort of starts.
Mm-hmm.
And then ended up transferring to the University of Oklahoma. Played there in kind of the Bob Stoops era. I was lucky enough to go to the national championship in 2004 when we got our asses kicked by USC. Super fun experience though. And then played with some of the all-time greats. Adrian Peterson was one of my teammates. Jason White, who won the Heisman Trophy. Just a ton of fun. Really tremendous guys. And then I was kind of the first graduate transfer in this program where you could be immediately eligible. In the past, before I did this, you'd have to sit out a year if you were going to graduate school. And my mom and us, we were really persistent, just kind of lobbying the NCAA. Said, why would I have to sit out a year? I have my degree. I'm academically motivated. I want to go somewhere else, so ended up going to Northwestern University for my last year. So it's kind of this crazy odyssey. It ended really well and had a lot of fun. Played 2 years at Northwestern for a guy named Pat Fitzgerald there, who's still there. Great football coach, great guy, and just had a blast. And yeah, it's kind of led me to this business that started today, and it's been quite the journey, but it's also been a lot of fun.
Interesting. So it sounds like you've seen a lot of athletes across all the different teams, and then you just mentioned some top level athletes that you saw kind of on their rise through the college ranks.
Right.
So what's kind of the let's say like insider scoop or insider feeling that you get from these guys? Because I've seen personally that the guys, like especially in American football, the ones that have the best numbers in the gym sometimes or usually aren't the best ones on the field.
I would say almost always, and I'm constantly telling people that. I'll say, the strongest guy in the gym, it's almost inversely correlated to their performance on the field. They can't relax. They strain when they move, super stiff. And I'll tell you something else I've done. I'll go back and say, I'll look at some recruit that I know that I've seen before that was just dynamite in high school. I saw high school film of them. They're the most incredible athlete, and I'm like, what happened to this kid? How did he end up missing in college? And I'll go back, I'll watch their high school tape, just a couple clips, and I'm like, damn, this guy can get it. And then you look at them in college, and they're just not the same player. What usually happens is everyone has this ideology that they enforce on these kids of like, oh, you need to be this weight. Oh, you need to, squat this, bench that. And they put these arbitrary numbers on them. And typically it decreases their performance, I would say almost all the time. It's something I constantly noticed. And me trying to compete at their level, I had to figure out, okay, how can I work smarter and more intelligently. I still was down to work hard, but I had to do stuff that directly translated to the field of play. If I wasn't doing that, I was never going to play.
Yeah, because there's no margin for error.
There's none.
Yeah, because if you miss out, you're benched.
Yeah, exactly. You just never seen the field, and why put in all that work if you're not going to get results?
Yeah, that's my story as well. Is like working so hard, and then seeing that hard work not pay off.
Yeah.
Albeit still playing at a high level, but wanting more.
Yeah.
And then trying to figure out, okay, how do I make this hard work actually count in the right manner that gets me the results, that gets me closer to what these elite guys already are doing unconsciously.
Exactly.
Yeah, and something you mentioned in soccer, the same for me. I've seen guys who were, when they were 18 years old, playing high-level academy, like in high school, amazing players, and then I see them 4 years later, and they look a worse player.
Yeah.
A worse athlete.
Yeah.
Specifically. Like the muscles don't know how to relax. They're not fluid. They're very stiff. They have all these like injuries just because of college weightlifting programs. And college soccer specifically, they have a test called the Cooper test, where you have to run 2 miles under 12 minutes. And most colleges, if you don't pass this test, you don't play.
Yeah.
Or you get cut. When in reality, it's not that relevant to actual soccer because the match is not 12 minutes and you're not running in a straight line.
At low velocity.
Yeah, at the same intensity. So, yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy. And I would just be like, are you not, to these coaches, I'd be like, do you not see this? I mean, I couldn't understand it, and it's something about the culture that it's cool. I mean, one of the things that drew me to you and why I wanted to connect with you is just, you're obviously very prescient to some of these things, a lot of these things, and it's just really cool to kind of see that. I think the culture is shifting now more rapidly than maybe ever, and it's because people like you are the sort of driving these things. And,
thank you, man.
And it's just bringing awareness, talking about them and stimulating people, to challenging the way they think and encouraging them to dig a little bit deeper and we all kind of have to unprogram this subconscious program that's been going on for a long time. Yet I am not my genetics. I'm so much more than that. I'm my environment. I'm what I put in my body. The way I feel can change minute to minute, day to day, based on who I'm around, what I ate, how I slept, and so this genetic theory of everything, and it's nothing in my eyes.
Oh, it's a joke.
It's a joke. And shout out to the pharma companies trying to ruin people's lives and sell us on this idea that pharmaceuticals will fix problems.
Oh yeah, even yesterday in my comments on a post, there was some doctor, some guy trying to talk about doing testing for DNA and genetics for athletes to figure out the right kind of plans for nutrition and training. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I'm like, just put all that stuff in the trash. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars trying to test your genetics to see if you should eat more carbs or not.
Yeah. Exactly.
The answer to that is like hidden around you based on where you live and the time of year. It's not about genetics.
Yeah, totally. So many of these things these days, there's so much noise, there's so much information, there's so much complexity. Everybody's selling you something, and so many of these things are addition by subtraction. Kind of have to remove the noise and figure out what the real signals are that drive performance, drive increased quality of life, and do them consistently, and do them again, over and over and over. That's the way I see it.
No, exactly. Yeah, but so let's go back a step to kind of share with the guys a little bit about your journey as far as injuries, and then like what you learned and how it got you to what you're doing now as far as like bioenergetics and voltage and talking about the Bioelectric.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, so I was always kind of one of those people that tried to train smarter, tried to train harder. And my freshman year at Cornell, we had a really difficult training camp, and I was just absolutely fried and exhausted pretty much every day. It was all I could do to get through it. I mean, I was literally just like, what the hell did I get myself into? And I just remember it was crazy. It wasn't even during practice or anything, but I was sitting down and I stood up and I just kind of felt this pop, and I was immediately just kind of like hunched over in pain. And I was just like, what was that? And I was just in shock basically. And I started limping, couldn't move very well. And I think I basically, tore some kind of muscle in my abdomen or something at some type of tear. Got diagnosed with all these different things. It's just a total mess. Okay, you have a sports hernia, you have a hernia, you have a stress fracture, you have this inflammatory condition called osteitis pubis, all, in my opinion, all kind of a bunch of how should we say, just
Like guesswork almost.
just a bunch of guesswork, to be honest. And I tried all these different therapies, and nothing was moving the needle. I just wasn't getting better at. There was a drug called Vioxx at the time that was very popular that they were giving to student athletes as well. Vioxx ended up getting recalled from the market because it started killing elderly people,
whoops.
stroking them out and having heart attacks. I won't go off deep end on that, but it was a terrible story. And I fortunately had a really supportive, loving family. It was just like, we'll do whatever we have to do to help you figure this out and get better. And so, yeah, I tell people, I have a lot of friends that are into collecting records and music and stuff like that. Like the same way you guys dig for records, I just started digging, like reading, challenging myself, talking to different people that I thought had interesting things to say, talking to massage therapists, acupuncturists, chiropractors, getting on forums. This was back in 2001, so it's kind of a different landscape today where there's just there's no Instagrams, no social media. So sharing ideas is a little bit more difficult. There were a couple forums. Elite FTS was kind of like a powerlifting one.
Okay.
That's some sports stuff. It was just all different kinds of stuff. Charlie Francis, sprint coach.
Nice.
And I just read this stuff and I just kind of follow what resonated with me and ended up finding some really interesting thinkers that were much more holistic in their worldview that really helped me rehab and just kind of changed everything for me and started changing the way I trained. Started training kind of in a much more high velocity, low load manner. Got introduced to different types of stimulus modalities that I had never seen before that weren't conventionally available in the athletic training rooms, and really kind of saved my life and saved my sanity. To be honest, I got healthy, ended up playing football at the University of Oklahoma. I didn't miss a practice or a game, I played after 2 years of not playing. Basically completely due to injuries. I played another, I played 2 years in Europe as well. I played another like almost 8 years and didn't miss a single practice or a game.
Fantastic.
And so it was this kind of incredible transformation, and just became really passionate about trying to share these messages, and really led me to helping start this company that we have today, which is called NewX Technologies. And basically this unique type of bioelectric current. We call it interactive neuromuscular stimulation. And just, kind of out preaching the word, sharing it with people, connecting with people like yourself, and educating them, talking to them about what it does, and seeing if it kind of resonates from there. Kind of pause for a second because I'm chatting a lot, but happy to talk more about the tech is and what it does.
Yeah. Help the guys understand the difference between AC and DC. Because as a first step to that, a lot of soccer and footballers across the world are very familiar with the stem machines that you see like in a lot of like physio rooms, where they put the pads on and it just vibrates the muscle and then it makes the pain go away, because obviously it's just numbing all the pain receptors.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Totally, yeah. So there's electrical stimulation is a broad product category, so I'll sort of be speaking generally. But generally speaking, alternating current doesn't have some of these components that we have with our technology. So generally speaking, alternating current, so you walk in and say, oh, my knee hurts. They might just put it around right where you're feeling the pain.
Yeah. And
it's also typically going to stimulate your nervous system to go into protection. So you'll get some type of what I would call co-contraction, which is kind of this inhibitory protective response. And if you think about that physiologically, going into protection is really what injury is. Any stimulus that goes into your body, in my opinion, you're creating some type of learning, some type of feedback that this is what we want. So if you're stimulating protection, I think you have a problem. And so how this is unique and different is this type of, and we have a unique combination of waveforms. One is actually alternating current. One is pulse direct current. But this pulse direct current and this alternating current waveform, when they're summed together, it doesn't cause this protective inhibitory response. So I can put it on my quad, for example, and I can do, hip flexion, I can do leg extension, I can do air squats, I can, cycle my leg at velocity, I can move. And so with that movement, we're teaching the muscle to turn on, activate again, and retraining it to absorb force, right? It's being able to absorb and create force, not move loads at slow velocity, are sort of the hallmarks of athletic movement, right? And so that's what this really enables you to do. One of the other unique components of this interactive stimulation technology that we have is there's a diagnostic component. So if somebody is injured or in chronic pain or has something that's kind of chronically limited range of motion, or they can't get in deflection the way they would like to in some position or whatever, say, you've got an athlete who can't pick up their legs when they're running, we can find out where that weakness is. It's really just kind of finding out where there's inhibition and muscle weakness, and we can turn it on. We can search the body and find out where that's coming from, and the patient will, on healthy and tissue that's not that inhibited, you'll feel a light tingling, and on that tissue that's not activating strongly and not turning on rapidly and at velocity, you'll go, oh damn, like wow, that's really intense there. And so we're not just electrically stimulating the muscle, we're electrically stimulating the muscle maximally. So it's being forced to turn on. That's the big deal. Just the way, a great athlete can do. They can turn on and off maximally, right? It's not just the ability to turn on. It's the ability to create peak, however you want it, like a maximal peak velocity or maximal tension, and then immediately be able to release that. Like, you see
highs and lows. Yeah.
Highs and lows. You see these beautiful soccer players. It's incredible how fast they can swing their legs, but in the last second they have to put some touch on the ball or something because they feel the position differently. That's turning on and turning off. So our stimulus can help an athlete do that a little bit better.
So it can directly help muscles that have some kind of like motor amnesia. Yeah. Help it learn to relax, that have been kind of stuck in this constant contraction.
Yes, yeah, that's what I say. Contraction, protection, inhibition. It can be used, for just gentle warm-ups. I mean, we try not to overcomplicate things. We've got some really good athletes that have been working with the Tech high school kids that have college scholarships, and they just use it to warm up, and it just basically recovers them because fatigue happens from the tissues going into contraction and fatigue, right? Like as we fatigue, we have an inability to relax, right? And so this just helps that muscle kind of restore this resting neurological tone so they can be themselves. That's one of the ways in which people are using it.
And obviously get your body into a much more parasympathetic state.
Absolutely, yeah. That's kind of the name of the game, helping people go into restoration after a game. There's just so much, kids and athletes and everybody deal with so much these days.
Oh, yeah.
So it's so difficult to get them into this restorative state, more difficult now than ever, and so this is just a simple tool that can be useful for that.
Yeah, it's such a big thing that I see kind of all across top athletes, but especially footballers and soccer players, is this ability to stay relaxed even under extreme pressure in a match.
That's incredible.
Not just in general, but actually how much of a parasympathetic state they can stay in even when they're running.
Oh yeah, totally.
And so the more they can increase that margin, then the more energy they have for the sympathetic state.
Absolutely.
Which then allows them to actually express themselves much more powerfully.
Absolutely. It's turning on and turning off.
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
That's what it is. Yeah. Soccer is so beautiful in that way because it has these bursts of intensity and relaxation all at the same time.
Slow, fast.
It's amazing to watch. I love it.
So can you please educate some of the guys about how does the mitochondria actually work in terms of voltage? Because most people don't actually realize that our body is so receptive to this, energy, but in reality, it's just voltage.
Yeah, I think this is gonna be a difficult one probably for me to articulate well. I read the literature and I kind of I intuitively kind of get it, but it might be tough for me to like re-articulate back to you. I will just say that the body's an electrical system.
That's right.
That's been proven over and over and over again. It's being increasingly documented, and there's really kind of an explosion of electricity being used for all different kinds of things these days, which is really exciting, encouraging to see. One of the seminal works that I read way back when, that's my Instagram handle, was this book, The Bioelectric, by a guy named Robert Becker, that goes into a lot of these concepts. Dr. Raymond Pete has talked a lot about the electrical nature of the body and the nervous system. There's a lot of stuff going on these days that is kind of developing. It's not even developing per se; it's just re-articulating that field because that field was marginalized.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
For so long, basically because of the capitalism and pharmaceutical culture and all these other narratives that we're driving things and really manufacturing reality to suit their profits. But yeah, it's really just it's an amazing. The body's an electrical system, and and we're just treating it as such, I would say, like working with nature, understanding what our nature is, and figuring out how to magnify that. Just a quick story I'll share with you that I just thought was so cool.
Yeah.
Talking to one of our customers the other day, who's a really neat guy, very spiritual, very religious man. And he was like, you know what, dude? He was like, this is so cool to me because I feel like this is restoring me to like what God intended us to be, restoring us the way that we were designed to move, which I thought was this really beautiful and profound thing. Getting back to, you see animals and stuff and how beautifully they move and elite level athletes. That's what we're trying to do by, understanding our electrical nature.
Yeah. It's a huge field that one could go down for years. But I think you mentioned a good point that like, you don't need to know all the literature like word for word.
Yeah.
As long as you understand and you see how it relates to nature, and you see how like the science helps you back up what already exists in nature, that's good enough. Like you don't have to know every single mechanism.
Exactly.
As long as you can kind of match up the Western, science with the understanding of it
and
doing it.
Exactly. And what you perceive and feel in reality, this, I mentioned Dr. Raymond Pete earlier, this guy that's hugely, profoundly influenced my life and the way I think. And he has said there is no protocol. The only valid protocol is think, perceive, and act. And so I think it's, more for me, there's kind of this first signal system where it's like when I hear something, I'm like, does that align with my intuition and my real world experience?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, I'm pretty much quickly moving on because that's, my instincts are valid, and that, it's like, so that's, I think a good way for people to learn and to think about things. And that's what's so cool about what you're doing is very aligned with reality. I feel good when I'm in the sun. I feel not good when I overtrain and lift a bunch of heavy weights and I can't move athletically. So that's, that's what draws me to this kind of thing keeps it resonating.
Yeah, that's one of my main principles is understanding, N equals 1, which is a term that this means like you are your own experiment.
Exactly.
And the more you learn from that, the farther you'll get. Because most people, well, all people, they do, if they want to, they do have a very strong intuition. If they foster that ability.
If they listen.
But most people don't. Yeah. But it's there if you want it. And you kind of undo the things that is dampening the effects of your intuition. It's a big rabbit hole on that one for sure.
It is. But, I think, I don't know, my life has always been served by listening to my intuition, I find. And whenever I've gone through difficulties, it's because I had this strong intuition about something and I was ignoring it.
It's the same thing because starting Football Entangled and building this whole brand and talking to like pro athletes and sharing my stories. And then I got guys, I've talked to so many pro athletes that are at the highest level and they share the same exact experiences with me, as far as the guys that are in the gym are usually the like defenders that are on the bench and not playing. And then the guys who are starting and playing, they're the ones that like come in the gym for 5 minutes and like foam roll and then walk out.
I remember American football related analogy here, guys. So apologies, but some of you guys may know this athlete because he's so big time. That always heard that about Deshaun Jackson. Who's actually from around here. Deshaun Jackson, probably one of the most dynamic, fluid, beautiful athletes in the NFL in quite a long time. But I had a friend who was a coach on the Eagles. And he's like, dude, he'd come in the gym for like 5 minutes. Barrett might not lift anything, say what's up to everybody, and go out and just trash everybody on the field. And that's common. This is not the exception. This is kind of the rule. Yet we're focusing all this energy in these endeavors.
And for those that don't know, in the NFL, on the Pro League for American football, there is the combine,
right,
where they run you through certain tests, and then a lot of the teams and scouts use those test results to judge whether or not they should sign you to a contract. I've always seen it, and I think this is kind of the unsaid understanding that a lot of pro teams don't rely on these results from the combine.
I hope they don't.
or at least the players that end up performing the best years afterwards aren't weren't the ones with the best results.
Aren't necessarily the people with the best comments. Absolutely. I mean, another, we were talking earlier, I've looked at the 225 bench press test.
Yeah.
And I will, just for fun over the years, I'll be like, okay, who did well at the 225 bench press test of the combine?
Yeah.
And then years later, I'll look back and say, how was their NFL career? Oh, it's terrible. It was awful.
Yeah.
It's literally, I think, if I were an NFL exec or in the scouting department or, making those type of personnel decisions, I would say, okay, this guy did really well. It's probably, let's downgrade him. He did really well in the 225 because that just tells me he might be really strong, but he can't relax at velocity. He's, you're teaching the nervous system to strain. And if you're straining when you're moving, you're going to be injured. There's going to be all kinds of problems.
Yeah, like he's strong at that movement, which is not the same thing as like throwing a ball or even running for that matter. Because when you run, one shoulder's here, one shoulder's back, and then there's a rotation.
Exactly.
And
so rotation's not
bench
happening.
pressing is like opposite.
You're literally teaching protection. You're teaching the body not to reflexively move the way that it was designed.
Exactly.
Right? So it's completely nonsensical. I'll give you another quick analogy. When I was playing college football, I would train kind of the way we're talking about, more explosive, more dynamic, more high velocity, low load type stuff. And had a friend that was an offensive guard. He ended up having very good athlete, ended up having an incredibly long NFL career, one of the best. Chris Chester, calling you out and shouting you out. Played for the Baltimore Ravens, Pro Bowler. He had a huge bench press. I didn't have a big bench press, but I could turn on so much faster than he could that I could pancake him, and I wasn't nearly as strong as he was, but I was so much more violent than he was,
Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing we're talking about. And it's just, again, doing things that directly correlate to the field of play.
Yeah.
If they don't improve your sport, don't do them.
Yeah. Why?
Why?
What's the point? And I think what you're saying goes into this definition of the word strength, because I see the word strength. It's tossed around. It's tossed around everywhere.
Yeah.
In every sense about injuries or performance or even just health in general. Yeah. People throw the word strength in to sound smart in a way, but they don't like relate it to like strength for your sport, strength for your position, strength for even that time of the match, and what is needed.
There's no context.
And then also, one of the things that I really like and that I've kind of brought it into my understanding is like how strength is really half coordination. Because it doesn't matter how strong you are if you fall over or you can't move your hand in the right direction.
Yeah.
And that's coordination from the brain, which then obviously all those signals are sent through the fascial system, right, which is all voltage at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think it's fair to say that your technology can definitely help improve holistic strength.
Yes, absolutely. And again, because it's the frequency of the current is a very high velocity stimulus.
Yeah.
So you get a very high velocity response from the nervous system, from the muscle tissues, from the fascia. Yeah. Certainly you need to consider, how you're coordinating the pads and whatnot if your goal is to improve performance. But yeah, and just keeping the muscles supple and pliable and relaxed, just that in and of itself moves the needle.
Mm-hmm. One question that I just thought of is there's this idea of fascial adhesions, right, where there's knots in the fascial web that prevent the optimal gliding of the different layers of fascia, as well as over the muscles. Can this device or this technology help break up fascial adhesions?
Yes, yeah, I think so. We haven't done any clinical research or anything like that, but my instincts and experience about it suggest absolutely. I think that it's also interrelated, right? So if you have a stimulus that can pick up these neurological inhibition, or I think they're fascial inhibitions, or neurological, they're muscular. I think we're kind of picking up on that same kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And so when you apply this voltage and this current into that and load those tissues, the response that you get is very much a relaxed or less inhibited feeling. So I think that absolutely that's what partly what you're getting.
Yeah, it is. For me, like fascial adhesions is a huge rabbit hole, because in my research, I found that the body will actually put stress and trauma into these adhesions as physical physical representations
Yep.
of past horrors,
Past traumas, past things. Yeah, I mean, it's not
past injuries as well.
over my, just seeing this technology being applied over a long period of time. I mean, I've seen times where you find this type of trauma or area that's a trigger point for somebody, and they'll actually have like an emotional response to it.
Yeah, that's right.
Sometimes it can be laughing, and I think because there's some level of catharsis going on where they're just like kind of euphoric, like, oh, I'm not feeling this trauma that I didn't even know I have.
Yeah, like a weight on their shoulders
Yeah,
just goes off.
It just goes off. And then I've also just seen people burst into tears, because these all things are all connected. Everything's so interconnected.
100%. The body is totally interconnected. It goes back to this idea of a fascial biointegrity, which is something that I talk about a lot.
Love that word.
Yeah.
Integrity. It's a good one.
Yeah. Actually, hold on, guys. Why don't you tell everyone where they can learn more about your technology, follow you on Instagram?
Yeah.
And also, guys, after this, we're going back to the house, and we're going to demo some of the tech. So make sure you guys stick around. All right.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram. It's just kind of like a personal account I have for our company and with this kind of thing called the Bioelectric _. So just how it sounds, the Bioelectric _. Our website is neuxtec.com, neuxtech.com. You can shoot me a DM. Shout out Taylor if that's how you heard about this. And then our Instagram account is just at NewXTech for our corporate account. So at NEUXTEC. We'd love to hear from you. We're all about chatting, connecting with people, sharing, what we're doing and more information about the tech and kind of unpacking it. Just trying to kind of meet people where they're at and build bridges of understanding. And we learn a ton from our customers, learn a ton from this conversation. We don't have a monopoly on good ideas. We're always open to learning, connecting with people, and figuring out how we can kind of provide better solutions for these, for these issues that a lot of us are all going through all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And this was an awesome conversation, Dan. Thank you so much for coming down.
This is so much fun, Taylor. I
appreciate
really it. This is probably the best podcast I'll ever do. I don't know how many people will invite me to do it on the beach, but yeah, anytime you want, I'm down. I'll make the drive down from San Francisco just to do this.
Yeah, walking the walk. That's the whole thing about the Football Entangled.
Yeah, that's right. You got to live the life, don't you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right, guys. So we're going back to the house.
Thanks,
See you in a
guys.
second.
Appreciate you.